Let's see. All right, we are live. Yay. How are you? How are you, Miss Demelza? How are
I am
you?
good. I am good. I am awesome. I just want to make sure that my
Perfect.
folks see me as well. So hold on one
Yes,
second. I'm going to go
absolutely.
ahead to where you are.
I am
On.
going live here on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and also Periscope, hoping that it all works out.
Yeah. And there I
Yes.
am.
Yay.
Oh,
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to view that request, go live with Miss Parental Wealth, and hopefully this works. I do hear a little feedback, but we're just going to go for this. I think it's time.
okay.
So hello, everyone. How are
Hello,
you? How
hello,
are you?
hello.
Hi, hi, hi. Okay, so I am Nursing the Know. I am here as your geriatric care coach, joined by my guest, Demelza Campbell with Parental Wealth. Hi, Demelza. How are you?
Hey, what's going on? How are you?
I am awesome. Thank you so much for joining me here today. For those of you who don't
Absolutely.
know, I have been working with Demelza for quite some time. Last week, we did a live on her IG channel. Well, it was just IG, right? I think we tried to do like
Yep.
dual, but it didn't quite work out. And this week,
No,
that's
no.
fine. That's fine. This week, we're going live here. We're going to try it on my platform and we'll do it back and forth for as long as we can make it happen. But
Yep.
before we get started, I wanted you to just introduce yourself to everyone here. I don't know that everybody knows exactly what you do, but please go ahead.
Absolutely. So, hey guys, what's going on? My name is Demelza Campbell, and I'm the CEO of Parental Wealth. We help dedicated daughters build wealth with their retired parents. So, what does that mean? It's exactly what I just said. Like your focus as a dedicated daughter is making sure that the money is there for your retired parents, and that might mean working with them over time to actually generate funds, shore up their money, make sure that they're building in some resistance to financial shocks. And that's where I come in as a financial coach.
I love it. I love it, Demelza. The reason I was so interested in your platform and what you do is
Mhm.
because part of what goes on with caregivers, kind of hand in hand with caregiving, caregiver burnout, and stress, is finances. Usually
Mhm.
that's for whatever reason, and I think we know the reasons. We talked about it last week, right? The rising
Mhm.
cost of healthcare. For whatever reason, these two things, and honestly, most caregivers are considered informal caregivers, meaning unpaid. They're not necessarily
Right.
listed under Medicaid, and they're just doing the best that they can. So when I found your platform and we connected, I was like, ding, ding, ding,
The whole
ding, ding, because
kiki. A whole kiki.
it really was, because people don't realize that your caregiving journey and path and the season itself can be so affected by your financial security or insecurity that it
Mhm.
completely skews how you look at caregiving. So ultimately, what I wanted to do was get together with you to help our caregivers who are either beginning their caregiving season or in the midst of it and having some challenges. And in this case, we're talking about crisis, right? Crisis
Right. Right.
caregiving. I wanted to expose them and give them some insight into people that do the work you do, because as a care coach, a geriatric care coach, I found it really tough to kind of find people because I didn't know I existed. And we know
Mhm.
about financial advisors, we know about, your tax accountants and all that. But to have a coach that will help you specifically map out and do everything that you need to with your retired parents or elderly or whatever stage that they are, but you're their caregiver, that is genuine. That's a gem. So I'm so glad to have you here again. And I
Thank you. I'm
wanted to
happy to
ask
be
you,
here.
thank you. I wanted to ask you a few questions, just so
Sure.
people kind of got an idea of, again, what you do and how you can help them.
Okay.
So, what are some of the belief systems that you come across with families? Because I think there are a lot of blocks and kind of things that people have always did or said or behaviors. So I wondered if you could
Mhm.
share with us just a little bit of what your experiences have been and kind of tell us like how you came to this path, because I think
Sure.
that story is really interesting. I don't think that everybody really knows. So please.
Absolutely. Sure. So let me start backwards, right? So I
Okay.
got to I become the CEO of Parental Wealth because I actually helped my own parents pay off about $86,000 in debt. And so when I say I helped them pay that off, I did not pay a single solitary dime towards that. That money came strictly from my parents in terms of they paid it off, they made the sacrifices, they made the decision to, work extra hours. They made the decisions to implement the strategies that I shared with them. It was not a situation where, as their daughter, I financed personally paying that off. So it was just an amazing experience with my parents. Even to this day, now, we did that over about 6 to 7 years.
Okay.
That was about 6 to 7 years of work. But now, because my parents kind of know how I think about things, they're already they stay a little bit ahead of me now, where they're like, hey, we've thought about maybe doing this and doing that. And I'm like, I have nothing to add. This is great. You're doing a great job. Thank you for telling me. Go forth and conquer, and so it's just been a really awesome experience. To answer your other question, right, because you really wanted to talk about what maybe some of the belief systems that folks have. So I want to maybe provide this distinction. I work with either the dedicated daughter and in some cases, definitely dedicated sons, right?
Sure, absolutely.
The retired parent. Yeah, I'm not at all. Not leaving them out. And also full non-binary. I do believe in them, there, and they as well. Yes. So I want to make sure to say that. But I work with the adult child, and I also work with the retired parents. And sometimes I work with them together, right? Because we're talking about building wealth. And that to me is also generational wealth. So having that person, having that adult child involved in this conversation early is super important. So what are some maybe limiting beliefs that I hear? Okay, so with retired parents, what I hear is, hey, we have time. We always have time. We've got time. We'll do it next week. We'll do it next month. We'll do it next year. We have time, and it's amazing. And I think that anybody who's watching this right now, we all recognize how fast time flies, right? Sure. And before you know it, we've missed all of these opportunities because we did not start, Yeah. So one thing with retired parents is definitely we have time. With adult children, or what I like to call them is key independence drivers or kids.
Yes.
But with adult children, what they tend to say and believe is that I know what you need to do. I'll just do it. I'll do it myself, right? And you know what? This is really key because what you hear with a lot of adult children or kids is this frustration that they've got to figure it out. They've got to plan it. They've got to make the decisions. They've got to make the phone calls. But sometimes we don't necessarily think about how complicit we are in making the decision that we're going to do it and take it on. But then we can't stand the results. We don't like the fact that we have all of this extra work and all of this extra weight, right?
It's a lot.
It's a lot, right? And so another limiting belief, and this one is for the culture, okay?
Okay, all right.
Yes. Is you hear from retired parents, I know what I'm doing. I got this.
Yes.
Right? Like I said, for the culture, it's like, I am the parent, you are the child. Never mind that you're 35 years old, right? And, that whole, you'll always be the child, they will always be the parent. That means that parent gets to maybe not take on new ideas, new perspectives or different perspectives because they kind of see you in a particular role and they're not allowing you to come out of that particular role. Those are probably the top three, kind of belief systems that I hear.
Those are great, Demelza. I think that you hit the nail on the head. Seriously, some of those same blocks is what I go through. But I just wanted to recap for anybody who's just joined. I have a few people who've come in on Instagram. I wanted to say hello to Sasha Yu 109. Thank you for coming. Nancy Yao, thank you for coming. The Silver Post, thank you for coming. Debt Free Joel, thank you guys for coming.
Hey, Debt Free Joel, what's going on?
Yeah, we got some folk in the building. We got to say hi.
Yeah.
We can't be rude in any way. We want to say hi. Thank you guys so much for coming and just taking the time to just meet with us and hear our discussion. And then if you also have any questions, seriously, feel free, put it in the comment, or you can put the question in the question box on Instagram. But tonight we're talking mainly about crisis caregiving. And I was just talking to Demelza about, how she came to this space and what she kind of had as tips. And just to recap, it sounded like one of the tips that you were giving in terms of mental blocks was, you have your parents who are your parents. And like you said, for the culture, they want to remain the parents. So generally taking advice from you is definitely going to be a mental block. But you've got some pretty good interventions and strategies for that. So just a couple. And no, I mean, I think that it's a big deal. And knowing that you really can't necessarily make them do something. And I like what you said too about knowing that yes, your parents are in debt and they have these things going on financially, but it wasn't your responsibility to take them out of it. So you didn't foot the bill, which is a big issue with caregivers, because a lot of what happens is, thankfully, your parents are able to still kind of work and generate income and do it.
Yes. And I want to speak into that just a little bit. I think a lot of people, so when we think like of movies and commercials and different things with maybe older people or retired parents, they're almost always healthy. You know what I mean? They're almost always able-bodied. They aren't necessarily dealing with things like, don't get me wrong, in my instance, we do have some illnesses that are within my family, but it hasn't kept them from being able from being mobile. You know what I mean? And one thing that I really drive super hard with not just my parents, but my clients is, you stay mobile, you stay active, you keep doing things that expand your mind and give you experiences. And that's a super important thing, be you able-bodied or not, is that you still be able to grow and expand and have experiences that say that this life is worth living.
Exactly. I definitely, I'm going to echo that, because I think a lot of what happens is when you become the full-time caregiver for an aging adult, it seems like because they're not able to be as independent, the buck kind of stops. There isn't an invigoration. There isn't that thirst and that kind of wonder for life. Things just become very mundane and status quo and isolating. So definitely I hear that, because I feel like a lot of our caregivers with people who have aging parents who have mobility issues get that the most. They really end up being that bedside person and kind of forget about all this financial stuff. So good point. Thank you so much. So what would be your first kind of piece of advice to the person that is now kind of putting themselves in the space of saying, because there was a couple of things that we talked about before in terms of noticing red flags, right? Like, how do you know that there's something going on, especially if your parents are very private? And I get this a lot, particularly with parents, children of aging parents who are suffering with dementia, and their parents are kind of first showing the signs, but they're denying it. They're not really letting them in. And so I get that part where they're saying, I want to help. I maybe think there's a problem. What would be a red flag for you? What would be something for an adult caregiver, child caregiver to say, I need to take a closer look?
Right. So a red flag for me, and there's a few, right? Like, so one of them is spending beyond your means. Like, if you have a general idea of what the take home or, retired income is, I think you need to be asking questions if you see a parent going on spending sprees. You know what I mean? If we're taking a, trip to a high-end store and buying items and you're kind of like, well, where's the money coming from? And it goes on a credit card. It's not necessarily cash, or even if it is cash, because there's a limit to cash. you sort of want to, be able to find out like, hey, so are you paying this off? Like, what's the plan with this? Like, because I just want to know for my peace of mind how you're managing these particular funds. I think another thing is when you see parents robbing Peter to pay Paul, right?
Yes.
I'm going to take money out of my IRA. I'm going to take money out of, whatever nest egg account to pay for something that's a bill that technically should be paid for with your monthly income or your biweekly income based on, your Social Security, pensions, whatever. You kind of want to start to ask questions like, hey, so how come this is coming from the IRA? Why isn't this coming from your monthly income? And I think you definitely want to look at it like when you're asking these questions, if the response is extremely reactive, right? And maybe extremely defensive, where, they don't want to explain things to you. They get extremely, like, I call it miserly, where they just really kind of close in.
It's just like, oh, stay away.
It's just, ooh, stay away. That to me is a huge red flag. It's kind of like, wait a minute, whoa. I feel like, I love you. I know you love me. And your reaction right now is saying red flag to me. And so that is, those are some of the things. I think one last thing, and this is actually really important to me, okay?
Okay.
When you have a retired parent that is literally doing nothing, okay? Nothing. Just watching TV all day, staying in the house all day. Maybe isn't talking to friends. Maybe their friends have passed away. You know what I mean? Their family might have passed away. They might be lonely. There might be a situation with depression. There might be a situation where they're just waiting to die. They don't feel useful. They don't feel that, they have a purpose. That is also a red flag to me. It's like, what's going on and how can I help? And part of it might be, hey, so what's going on with your money? We get to do more than you just sitting at home and waiting to die.
I know. And I think that's always something that comes up with caregivers. It's like, I want to be able to motivate my parents more. How do I go about doing that? And I think a lot of it is hunt and peck. You got to kind of figure out what works for them. It's going to be a trial and error thing. I just want to come over here to the comments because we've got a few people, they've got some things to say. So like I said, we got to say hello. Okay. So the Silver Post says 100%. It can be hard to hear advice from your kid. Tough to navigate alone. Absolutely. This is why you need a coach. Okay. It's true. This is one of my questions, wasn't it? It was, how do you have this conversation? How do you navigate this conversation, especially when the conversation feels like it's going into that uncomfortable space? Because, let's face it, most of the time it is. Again, I think culture or not, right? I think most parents don't want to hear it from their kids, especially once they've gotten to that space of where they feel like they should be financially fit. Right.
So, listen, I am not going to say that talking with every parent is a breeze because it clearly is not, right? But one thing that you can't do is you cannot make them do something that they don't want to do, right? Like, just point blank and period. You can't do it. But what you can do is you can be consistent, right? You can show up as the partner that maybe they don't think that they need, or maybe they don't think exists within you, but you can still show up as that partner and you can still show up and consistently discuss finances. Even if you're just discussing your finances, right? Like being more free with what's going on with your money, the mistakes that you made, what you wish you could have changed, how you're, building up your nest egg, whether or not what you plan to do with your money, how you want to leverage it, having those conversations and having those conversations with kind of no ulterior motive, right? Like not to kind of force them to, make a call, but because you want to share this information. Yeah, we tend to do that just a little bit, right? Like, hey, so I'm going to tell you that I did this, and that's going to make you decide to,
because we're dedicated daughters
to the money.
Right. That's it.
Exactly.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
No.
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 Okay. All right. Okay. All right. No. Okay. Okay.
So, by consistently showing up, and also, by the way, showing your own flaws, right?
Okay.
To a certain extent, we as children, we tend not to tell our parents when we mess up.
Yes.
When we don't do so well, and sometimes they need to hear that, to be given the freedom to see that, hey, that failure wasn't that epic. It was only a lesson. It was something that you learned from.
Sure. Sure.
And I want to be able to work with you on this and partner with you on this so that you can be set up in a much better position. So show up consistently and show up exactly how you are in terms of really doing this financially independent work and what's necessary to do this work, which a lot of times it's not about, not going to Starbucks, right? Like if you want to go to Starbucks, go to Starbucks, spend your $5, $6.50 on a drink, fine. But if you're going every day, well, then you need to take out the calculator and be like, hey, that's a lot of money.
Where's your calculator, by the way?
Listen, at the ready all the time.
Yeah.
And so you really want to get to the point where you're just really consistently showing up in that financially independent way.
I love it. I love it. That's so great. And I think one of the things that you harped on, I really want to just echo. And for those of you who are just joining, I just wanted to say that this is a conversation about coaching. Well, Demelza will coach you into having financial conversations with your retired parents, but we're talking about crisis care, crisis finances, crisis interventions. How do we have those true, authentic conversations? And what Demelza was just sharing with us, I think was huge. And I just want to break it down real quick, is the vulnerability. I think that's what I heard you saying, is that the vulnerability is huge, because as a dedicated daughter with type A personality, I think I'm coming in and we're going to do this and we're going to get it done and that's it, right? And then I forget that there's a level of vulnerability that I would probably need to bring to the table to make this conversation go a lot smoother. So great advice. I didn't even think about that. Of course I didn't. I'm not the guru here, but I just, because I work with a lot of caregivers, finances, budgeting, and all of that, but I didn't even really, usually it's always the opposite conversation. My mom won't listen to me, my mom, or my dad, or my parents. And it's never about me. Like, what as the kid would I be bringing to the table to help them feel more comfortable, just have that ease in that conversation. I do want to say a couple things. We do have a couple comments here. Instagram is live. They are having,
What's up?
APG Birdie says, I probably looked into my mother's finances too late. Now worried that there's not enough money, or that there's the money. Now worried there's money I don't know how to find. So
okay. Yeah. So all right. So let's try and dive into that. So what I am very aware of, especially with parents that are like boomers, right? So like, and you have young boomers and then you have more mature boomers. But if you grew up in a certain age and a certain stage and maybe a certain background, you didn't always put your money in a bank. You found ways, like I call it the squirrel, like in Chipmunk. I'm serious. I really call it like kind of the squirrel and chipmunk method, right?
It's true.
Because you have some people who literally will bury the nuts, or bury the money in a place. It might be in the house. It might be, in a mattress. It might be in a truck that's parked in a dump. You know what I mean? In a dump yard. I know it's not a dump yard, but in a dump somewhere. They just have learned to not necessarily put all of their eggs in one basket. They have it spread across multiple credit unions. There might be a few hidden credit unions. And what I would tell you is you get to ask, but it means you got to ask and be very clear about what you're asking for. You don't just say, hey, so can you tell me how much money you have? Because they're going to tell you the amount of money that they want to tell you. No. You have to say stuff to the effect of, okay, so what other accounts did you have that you haven't told me about? Where do you have this hidden in a mattress? Where's the money that you don't necessarily talk about? Like you just kind of squirrel away wherever they check and you put it in that hidden account. Where is that? Because I need to count it so that I know exactly how much money you have down to the penny. I don't round up and round down. I want to know to the penny
Oh,
how
there's no
much
rounding.
money you have.
It's no rounding.
There's no rounding. No, and it drives, oh my God, it drives some of my clients nuts. They're like, oh, we'll just round. No, we do not round. I want to know the exact amount of money. Because when you round, see, this is what happens. And it's the same thing with like that app Acorns, right? Like they round up or they round down and they take a little bit. Sooner or later, imagine rounding down or rounding up 10 cents every day for 10 years. That's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like, I just like to know exactly what I'm working with. And you should too, as a retired parent and as a kid. You really get to know exactly what you're working with and be firm in understanding that.
I think also too, this is a practice for you, because I often joke with you people who are in kind of this geriatric care world. And I say, as much as I'm doing this for my caregivers, their parents, and, you know, the people in their family, I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this for my children who come down the line. But ideally, when you're looking at budgeting, it's not just about your aging parent. It's also about you, right? You were looking at how you want to age now. And this is also part of the conversation. So kudos to you, because I think that piece right there, that's a bit like having that conversation and being open enough to say, where is all the other stuff? And I think even getting the guts to say that, I think, you know, is hard. So that'll probably end with that last question. For the adult child who is bashful, a little scared, and respecting all cultures, respecting all things, right? Because I think there is that part too. I grew up in a culture, my parents are from Haiti, I'm Haitian American, first generation, and there are just certain conversations we don't have. Now we do. Right. But I think growing up, it was very pre-understood. You just don't have those questions. That's not something that you ask somebody, and kids are seen, not heard. So the roundabout way of asking that question is, what would you say if I was your client? I came in first day and was like, I am petrified about having this conversation with my mom. She's not open. She's not receptive. My dad's even worse. I need to work up the confidence. What would you say to me? Because I want to know.
Okay. So one thing, so look, I'm talking to you, right? Like,
right.
So
yeah. You're talking to me. We're here.
I tend to ask you what scares you more.
Okay.
Right? Like you say you're petrified to talk to your parents about this, but how petrified would you be to carry their debt? You know, how petrified would you be to not have a plan and find out that the government's going to make a decision as to the life of your mom and your dad? Not them, not you, but the government, right? Like, what scares you more? Because that, for me, has been in some respects a bit of a driver in terms of like, I was just as scared. So my background is African American, right? My Southern,
deep Southern. We talked about that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes.
South, you know, African American father and Northeast African American mother. So, you know, really interesting. But we didn't talk about money. Not like that. You know what I mean? We didn't talk about money, but it scared me more that they wouldn't have agency. They wouldn't have choice, you know? I grew up and I saw what happened to a relative when I felt like she didn't have choice. And I didn't want to see that happen with my own parents. So yeah, scared. I'm talking butterflies, the whole nine, like sweating, right?
Sweating.
At the same time, sweating. At the same time, what scares you more? Because it's a conversation. It's not the firing squad. Like, you know, I doubt if they're going to disown you. They might not like you so much for about 5-10 minutes, but they can get over that too. But what I like to say is, when you choose not to have this conversation, when you avoid these conversations, these caregiving conversations, these financial conversations, there's 100% chance that you are never going to get the results that you want because you avoid it. 100%. But if you go in and you try and you try again, right? Like, let's just think Thomas the Engine back in the day, you know, sometimes you got to try. Sometimes that effort didn't work. Shift, pivot, try another effort. I like to say that when you look at a flower from, facing down, you see it in a whole new light, right? But if
Right.
you get down to its level, you see different angles that you were never aware of. You have to switch it up.
Got
You
it.
can't keep doing the same thing expecting a different result. So you going stronger or harder or, more forcefully, but you're basically doing the same thing except louder, you
Right.
know?
Right.
Imagine if you did something that they did not expect. And that goes back to that vulnerability. That goes back to that transparency. That goes back to maybe owning what you haven't done so right. It sometimes gives them permission to do it. So I hope I answered your question. I
You
think I
did.
did,
Oh
but I
no,
want to
my
make sure I
God.
did.
No, that's great. That's great. Oh my God, I couldn't have asked for a better note to leave off on. I just wanted to mention in the comments over here on Instagram. I told you, Instagram is buzzing, honey. Vince Myers says, "Bullseye." He says,
Vince.
"It's just a conversation, but it needs to happen. Keep trying, switch it up." Absolutely.
That's it.
I think that's the echo. Thank you, Vince, for just summing that up for us, because I think we kind of get caught up in the results not happening when we want it to, and
Right.
not giving ourselves the grace, the patience, the time.
Have to.
Because you said by your own admission, it was a process. It took several years to kind of get to this
point. Yeah. It took several years. And the first 2 years were rough. Like, it was rough, right? And, I consider my clients, my best clients to be my parents, because I'm never going to do things with other people's parents that I wouldn't do with my own parents, right? Like, that's my bar.
Right.
Like, I mean, it's literally like, hey, I need you to see me as like your adopted daughter while we're working together.
Right.
Or maybe your favorite niece that you can kick it with and you love kicking it with, but you know that you wouldn't do with like your daughter, because sometimes it just hits different when you have somebody who is not a part of your family to be able to talk to versus somebody who's in your family. There's no judgment here. Like, I'm not judging you. I'm not shaming you. I want to find out what we get to do to get you moving. And that's really where a financial coach comes in. Is sometimes, having me, I help break the ice, and that's fine. If that's a role that I play so that you guys can work better together, then that's a win in my book.
Yep.
It's a win, because I'm not going to be around for 6 years unless you want me to be around for 6 years.
And we can work together for 6 years.
We can work together for 6 years, right?
Yeah.
But ideally, that's why I do work with those kids. It's like, listen, you got to learn how to like talk to them in a different way, because that's what's going to keep them going. You're going to be around when I'm not around, right? When they have dreams and fears and, might be feeling some levels of despair. And by the way, if somebody's feeling despair, I am an advocate for therapy, even, with our elders, all the things that we give to ourselves. There's no reason for us to sit here and think that our elders and our parents also don't want or need those things.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like,
oh my gosh. Yes, we have
they get to have it too.
To talk about. This is true. I think on so many different levels, we could look at this conversation as cathartic for not only, the situation of the finances, but then also the relationship. There are different ways of kind of approaching finances that can trigger some of what, what's kind of going on. I've got another comment here. Omar Castaneda, this is in Facebook, says, "My dad put makeup." Oh no, that's no, we're gonna have to hide that one.
Exactly.
We're gonna.
But you know what? You bring up a good point, right? Because we talk about parental wealth. Wealth is not always money. You know what I mean? Like, and I really try and make sure people understand that. Like, I have a 4-part framework, and one of those parts is generational wealth, right? And the other is aging in power. But we talk about wealth not just in terms of cash, but really what's being passed down, what's the legacy, what you learn. When you start talking about money with your parents, you really start connecting with them. You learn their history. You learn their money history. You learn about their parents and what it was, what was passed down to them. And you really start to get close, because money will bring people either really close together or really far apart. And what I look at for parental wealth is it's not just an opportunity to talk cash and money. It's really also an opportunity to really connect and build that relationship while you're at it. So
I love it. I love it. Demelza, we've got so much, like I said, to talk about. You kind of mentioned a little something about building, and I want to talk about wealth building because I think that's like a misnomer, but that's going to be for another time. We've taken up,
Absolutely.
I mean, it's about 30, a little bit more than 30 minutes. We're trying to make sure that we keep you guys for just a short amount of time to get these cool gems. We'll be back next week on parental _wealth. And we'll be talking more. So Demelza will be talking more money talk, and I'll do some caregiving, but we're going to switch this up a bit because we want to make sure that we cover all aspects. And if there are any questions, concerns, comments that you have, KT Birdie says, okay, thanks, ladies. Leave it in the comments, DM me, DM Demelza. Let us answer your questions because we're here for you. We want to support you. This is what we do, but we're wanting to bring this on a bigger platform because I think we both recognize that everybody's in a different space in their caregiving season. And if you're struggling, you need some tips, you need some advice, we want to be here to support you. Demelza, was there anything I missed that I didn't say or should say?
No, that was really it. Listen, guys, please make sure that you DM us, shoot us an email, make sure that you're talking to us. We really want to hear from you. Please, I look forward to seeing you next week. We're definitely going to dive in much deeper in terms of the money, but also on caregiving, right? Because I think that it's really important to be prepared, like how we should be looking at our finances at different stages, at, you know, pre-retired, retired, 70s, 80s, 90s. You really want to make sure that we understand what this caregiving journey is going to be, both emotionally and financially. So we look forward to seeing you guys next week. Same bad time, same bad place. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. And we'll see you there. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful day. Wonderful night, I should say. All right. Let's end this one over here. Demelza, we did